And he goes on, okay? Dayton walked over to the long mahogany near table, which contained stacks of his book in hardcover. The color of the cover jacket was jet black with bold white lettering. He stopped for a moment to read the title. Conspiracy Theory, Conspiracy Fact, Means, Motive, and Opportunity. And he thought to himself, I wish my father was here to see this. His son had just had his first book published. He shook his head and grinned with a lopsided smile on the right side of his face. Dayton sat down and began signing copies of his book. While signing the normal catchphrases on the inside first page for those in line, he noticed an older gentleman kept pacing in and out of the line. He walked away briefly to the restroom, then returned back to the back of the line. Most people, Dayton thought, just wanted to pay for the book, meet the author, get it signed, and get out. But this man, who was neatly dressed in a white golf shirt, navy pants, and had an old London fog raincoat draped over his arm, may have had something else to ask him that he didn't want others to hear. As the line dissipated, the ringing of the cash register at the other end of the table became intermittent. The neatly dressed gentleman got his apparent wish and was the last man standing. He pushed the book in front of Dayton, and the author opened the cover. The gentleman looked down at the detective with sad eyes and said nothing. Dayton looked up at him, expecting a conspiracy question. What would you like me to write? Dayton asked. The man took his right index finger and pointed at the page, while he simultaneously placed his other finger to his lips. Dayton looked down at the front page, normally reserved for kind words written from an author's pen, only to find something had already been written there in pencil. I was a friend of your dad's. He didn't commit suicide. He was murdered. Can we talk? Okay? So that sets the stage for the book. You have a detective turned author, writes about conspiracy theories, and at his first signing, he's told 22 years ago, your father didn't kill himself. He was murdered. So let's get back to conspiracies for a second, because obviously we're starting one in this book. Now, conspiracies often point fingers at people, different groups. We mentioned the Freemasons. Then there's the Zionists, Jews, or the bankers. The Vatican always has their hand in something, or other religious organizations. And also political affiliations. People talk about the Bush-Clinton cabals and so forth. And like I said, they're all bent on world domination. One of the ones that probably takes up considerable time in the conspiracy circles is the Freemasons. The person you have here is Albert Pike. He wrote the book on the 33rd degree Scottish Rite. And because of some of the things he wrote in the book and the references to Lucifer, people have misinterpreted what the Masons actually stand for. Now, I'm going to read another short passage, and this actually is back a few chapters, because what I just read to you doesn't start right at the beginning. It actually starts about 4 or 5 chapters that are short. And this is the main character, Dayton McCormick, with his father at Liberty Island. The little boy couldn't contain himself. He pressed his face against the glass window of the ferry and squished his little nose flat. Are you excited, Dayton? Yes, I am, Daddy. We were talking about her in history class just before school got out yesterday. What do you know about her? The father inquired. Well, I know a lot of immigrants knew they weren't American when they first saw her. She's made of copper, and she was a gift from French school kids. And she has that poem on her by Emma Lazarus, piped in Mr. McCormick. Give me your tired and poor. Yes, Daddy, that one. The poem is correct, Dayton, but she wasn't a gift from French children. She was a gift from French Masons. She sits on Liberty Island, which was formerly called Bedloe's Island. The base of the pedestal she stands on was once Fort Wood and had cannons in it. They were used to protect New York City from naval invasions. Dad, what is a French Mason? Dayton inquired. Mr. McCormick loved his job as a history teacher, although he was frustrated with the common misconceptions taught to children in schools. But he never missed an opportunity to correct his son with the truth. French means from France, so indeed it was a gift from the French. Freemasons are a fraternal secret society, kind of like a men's-only club, he explained. Many things have been attributed to Freemasons that are both good and bad. Are they bad, Dad? Dayton asked. I don't think so, Dayton, his father explained. Some of the great men who founded this nation were Freemasons. I think people like to believe what they want to believe without looking up the facts. Human history is filled with that. He rubbed the top of his son's head. There have always been scapegoats in every society, including ours. So you can see what the opinion is of the father, and it carries on with the son of the book. And of course, where do we get all this stuff for Freemasons? Nearly every monument or big building, the Capitol building, the White House, the Washington Monument, they've all had Freemasonic ceremonies performed at them. And because they're a secret society, people tend to question what they do. In fact, there was a big anti-Freemason movement back in the 1800s. But is there really a Masonic conspiracy? And this is where we get into some of the symbolism. Right here you have Washington, D.C. You have the Capitol right here. You have the Washington Monument right here, the White House. And it kind of looks like the streets are laid out in a compass and square, because you have Pennsylvania Avenue and Maryland Avenue right here. And this is the symbol for that Freemasons use, the G, which is for geometry or God, inside the compass and square. So, you know, like all symbolism, there's various layers. You could say it's kind of like a big onion. And you really have to peel it away. And because of the things written by Albert Pike, and because it's a Freemason designed city, there's also a pentagram in the streets above the White House. And of course, the pentagram is for Satanism. Of course, the Satanists didn't adopt it till the middle of the 1800s, and this had already been designed. So I don't know where they get that from, but there are a lot of people who either don't like Masons or don't like to do their homework. And this also pertains to the symbol on the back of the dollar bill, which we're going to go into. This symbol, Annuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum, is the Great Seal of the United States, and many people in conspiracy circles say this is a symbol for the New World Order that everyone's talking about. There's going to be a world tyrannical government, and we're all going to be suffering because of it. What I'd like to explain to everyone here is that all symbolism of note is based on astrology, all of it. I've looked back. You know, people often get confused because of what happens in history. Hitler, for example, the Nazis adopted the swastika, yet there are Buddhas with swastikas on them. There's pottery from the Indians in the southwest United States with swastikas on them. And, you know, the truth is when you get back to the base level of all symbolism of antiquity, is that it is all based on astronomy and astrology. I'm going to prove it to you. Okay? The pentagram that you just saw above the White House is a 5-pointed star. 5-pointed star has long been a symbol for Spica and Virgo. Also, there are 5 conjunctions between Earth, Venus, and the Sun every 8 years. So it's every 584 days, so you have one here, and then one here, and then one here, and then one here. And what it does is it draws, you know, a pentagram. Sorry, I'm a little fast with my laser pointer. So others like the Star of David, the swastika, as I said, they're adapted from older cultures. There's actually swastikas in old Jewish synagogues in Jerusalem, you know, and I don't think that they had the same meaning way back when. So now I'm going to read another quick book passage, and this is when David meets one of the other characters in the book. His name is Professor Richard Musson, and he's a theology professor at Georgetown University. As he walked up from the library, he could see what appeared to be an older gentleman wearing a tweed jacket with a brown hat. He was gently throwing stale breadcrumbs to a pack of hungry urban birds. "Professor Richard Musson?" Dick inquired. The older man turned around to look at his inquisitor. His bushy eyebrows, large nose, and round face stared back at the young detective. "Yes." "I was wondering if I might have a moment of your time," Dick asked. The older gentleman turned his wrist and looked at his watch. "I have class to teach now. Could you ask a question while we walk?" Musson said as he arose from the bench. "Sir, I'm sorry to bother you," Dayton said as he followed the professor and noticed the pronounced limp in his stride. "I believe you knew my father." "And who is he?" Musson replied as he walked. "Mickey McCormick. You served with him in..." Anticipating what the young man was going to say, Professor Musson turned around and put his finger almost up to Dayton's mouth. His eyes had opened wide as saucers, and the young detective could tell he had gotten his attention. "I prefer to call it Southeast Asia," the man replied, and then turned and continued toward the lecture hall. "Yes, I remember him very well. Tragic that he died at such a young age. I never believed what I read in the paper." So Richard Musson is a cohort of the main character, David McCormick's father. And this is where symbolism meets history, and I try to explain a little bit about all symbolism being based on astronomy and astrology. As far as Masons go, the design of Washington was primarily George Washington and Pierre L'Enfant. Washington was a Mason. L'Enfant, it's questionable. Benjamin Banneker over here, who sort of took over after L'Enfant left, he wasn't a Freemason. Neither was Andrew Ellicott. And Thomas Jefferson, who was Secretary of State during the time when Washington's construction began, wasn't a Mason. So when people talk about Washington, D.C. being a Masonic city or a Masonic conspiracy, they haven't looked back and saw the people who designed it. And there may have been closet Masons, and I'm not saying they weren't involved with it. What I'm saying is people should look back and do their homework.